briefly, so I know this is a Q&A, but I wanted to take the first portion just to highlight kind of who I am really and my journey, notable projects, and some tips that I usually like to give right off the bat. I know you guys have specific questions, but there's a few things that I think is always pertinent to a lot of people looking to get into data science, but also even maybe get the next job and enhance their portfolio, etc. Right? That'll take up the first portion, and then I'm already seeing a ton of questions come through. That's like a huge portion of the rest of this session will be just answering your questions and yeah, just going back and forth. Without further ado, so brief introduction of myself. My name is Madhav. I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I'm currently living in Los Angeles. As you guys probably know at this point, I'm a senior data scientist at the Walt Disney Company. I work in their movie purchasing and product merchandising group, and real focus is on personalization, where I'm creating recommendation engines, curating really personalized CRM strategies, all algorithm driven. So it's kind of exciting. It's like the cross section between creative and data. And interests, I love to travel. I think we had many trips planned for this year that all kind of got scrapped, but I am looking forward to kind of traveling again and getting out there. In the meantime, I'm like very outdoorsy. I think that's what I love about LA. I always on a hike, rock climbing, etc. Indoor, outdoor. I absolutely love it. It's kind of my it's where I kind of center myself, for lack of a better word. My favorite data science topic is NLP. If you guys see my LinkedIn or even my posts on Reddit or whatever, you notice I put out a lot of projects around this topic, and in particular text generation. I think it's just so fascinating, especially with the recent progressions with GPT and all of those transformer models. I think it's really the bleeding edge of data science at the moment. So I think in my initial message, and I think talking to some of you guys on LinkedIn, you guys know that my journey is pretty unorthodox, right? I don't have the creme de la creme Stanford CS background that gets me into all the data science positions. I didn't really code that much during undergrad, and that's the God's honest truth. My background really started in aerospace engineering with a minor in CS that I really didn't use. I think it was like for my resume, but like I rarely actually coded personally and built projects at all. My goal at that point was really the two things: get a structural design position and work at Boeing. I think that was like going to be my career. That's how I was going to make it, right? That was exactly like my only thought. Data science, data at all, like wasn't even on my radar. So I did that. Luckily, I was able to work at Boeing. I worked on commercial airlines, and it was a lot of fun, but aerospace is a very archaic industry, and I quickly realized it's not for me. It's not dynamic enough. I just didn't really mesh well. What I started doing is try to figure out some extracurriculars to reignite my passion, and that came in the form of these analytics groups that that Boeing had. And these analytics groups are just looking at performance, looking at trajectories in terms of how many, say, projects will complete in the next quarter, all of the above, those types of like, I would call entry-level data analytics and science. I started loving that so much that ended up being more of my time than my actual job. I just was constantly looking forward to those projects. We're looking forward to my like weekly meetings with that group. So that was the catalyst for me to get my master's in data science. I did that for a couple of reasons, because one, Boeing was paying for it, so obviously that was less of a burden, but I really wanted to make sure I had the complete skill set, and I had a very rigorous way to learn, because working full-time and doing that was a little tough for me. So the master's route helped me give kind of the regiment that I need to build on my skill set. And then once that was done, I ended up joining ZS Associates as a data science consultant. They're a management consulting firm that focuses in healthcare and biotech, like pharmaceuticals. That was intentional. I think I was really honing in on consulting positions, just because in consulting, you get work to the bone. There's no lie about that, but you get to work on so many projects in a short amount of time. It was a really great way for me to add some breadth to my resume and portfolio within a short amount of time, like I mentioned. Again, that was my first data science position, and it had a pure NLP focus, which at the time was also a big interest of mine. So it kind of checked a lot of boxes for that first data science position. And a lot of people transitioning, I think whoever's looking to transition or recently transition, I think you can all kind of resonate with that quote unquote inferiority complex. And that happens across the board, not just in data science. And that's something I dealt with heavily. I mean, I can put my ego aside and tell you guys, like, I really felt that. I felt like I wasn't good enough. I didn't belong there. I'm not a natural at this. I just felt like doubting myself nonstop. And it was only until I said, you know what, data science is fun. Let me make it fun for myself, which kind of happened a year and a half after that. That's when I started building projects, writing Medium articles, doing the things that I like, and the reason that kind of drew me to data science in the first place. And that was like a complete shift. Literally, like the second I started writing, the second I kind of put myself out there in terms of my skill set and data, that is when I think it just, like I said, completely changed my perception and my attitude towards data science. And so after, and you guys might know this one project that's comparing text summarization techniques, that kind of quote unquote put me on the map. I feel like me building that end-to-end project, me getting this positive feedback that, oh, that was actually interesting, you should do more stuff like this. It made me kind of more, I guess, sure of myself and maybe more interested in this field of data science. It like sparked that interest again. And I think it's no secret that the second I found that love for data science again, that's kind of when the great quote unquote offers started happening again, or started coming my way. And a few months after that, I ended up kind of accepting an offer at Disney as a senior data scientist. As you know, there's many options of where you can go as a data scientist, like hardcore tech, pharmaceuticals, entertainment. This was something that really kind of resonated with me. I had my first opportunity to create a vision for a data science group. By that, I mean like a complete roadmap. I get to really figure out what the team should be working on, which is new for me. And I feel like it's a welcome challenge. I'm really excited about this new path in my career. And I love entertainment. I think it's kind of a cool intersection between creative and data science. So that's where I'm at right now. I've been here for a little while now and absolutely loving it. I feel like I haven't really had any intention to leave at the moment, which I'm pretty happy to say.
On to the next question from Winston. How easily do one's skills in mathematics translate to success in data science? Particularly, does theoretical knowledge matter very much, or do many data scientists just apply mathematical tools?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Like, I hate to say this, but like, if I think about all the data science that I interacted with, I think 1% really knew the linear algebra behind a lot of these models and whatnot. It's just, I don't know, the age of sklearn is taking us over and literally just throw anything at data science models and kind of build things. What I think is more useful is understanding the assumptions that go into each model, where each model performs well, where each model doesn't perform well. Things like, so if you decide to go to a linear model route, understand things like multicollinearity, understand things about like the Gini index within tree-based models, like things like that are really useful because, like I mentioned, you want to easily be able to understand why your model's not performing poorly, right? I think whatever gets you to be able to do that is the name of the game, right? Whether that means going through all the mathematical proofs behind every equation, sure, if that gets you there, great. If it just means reading the sklearn documentation, that's great too. But that is what you need to do because unlike a clear-cut Kaggle data set, the things you get in the wild is very messy. Data might be just jumbled up and not really great. You need to be able to make sense of that data and then see if there's something inherently wrong with the data when you're building your model. All these things are super critical. So if you can't course correct and quickly understand what's happening, what's going wrong with your model, that's when you're going to run into issues. So that's the knowledge matter I would really emphasize on. And mathematics could be the way to get there.
Jacob is asking, coming from a CS background with no formal education in data science, what are the main gaps I should be looking to fill in?
Sure. So you're obviously a very proficient coder, right? And it gives you a leg up in some aspects. At this point, you really need to understand the basic data science concepts, right? You need to understand the different types of models, like even as trivial as understanding where regression or classification plays a part, right? Understanding how to frame a problem, right? Because the big difference between say data engineers and say data scientists is you have this blank canvas and you have to sometimes figure out what the problem is, how do you solve the problem, what's the best way to solve the problem, that sort of thing. And that's where you need to kind of fill the gap, right? And that means potentially going through a certificate and understanding the core methodologies, understanding how to apply the core methodologies. Yeah, that would be my biggest suggestion, Jacob. Yeah, just understanding the different types of models, I think would be your best bet.
Thank you, Shannon. Next up, do you think getting your master's degree was integral to getting noticed by recruiters?
Yeah, a bit. I think a part of it was it helped me build a pretty robust portfolio in and outside of school. I think that was definitely integral. But yeah, I think it did solidify that I have the understanding I need to transition from a non-data science background to a data science background. So I think it's a combination of my portfolio and the master's degree. I do think it was really helpful.
And another question from LL. In terms of career progression, should more focus be placed on the depth of knowledge, for example, within a domain knowledge, or breadth of knowledge, for example, software such as Power BI or Tableau?
That's a great question. I would say at some point your domain knowledge is a lot more useful, right? As if you just want to be in the stage where you're implementing things and that's your role, sure, breadth is really useful, but the second you get ingrained within a organization, you understand the data in and out, you understand the nuances of that specific industry, that's when you can start answering the really big picture strategic questions that someone who has a breadth of knowledge won't be able to answer, right? That's when you could figure out, you know what, our KPIs, our key performance indicators should start going in this direction for long-term growth, right? And only true domain knowledge could help you start answering those questions. Yeah, so I think, yeah, that would be my answer to that.
For your questions. Jacob is asking, currently looking for a new role to enter. What should I be looking for in an enterprise level role? Are there any tools or skills that they would be using that I should favor more?
What should be looking in an enterprise level role? Just the application, right? Like a lot of these enterprise level roles are marketing focus or paid media focus, etc. Like look for things that interest you, right? Because a marketing problem is very unique, right? So if you don't like that, you're going to be miserable working in those roles. So that's something to look for. Just make sure it's kind of in a realm that you're interested in. Tools and skills. I always recommend to people to be very familiar with the AWS suite, pulling data from S3, understanding EMR, SageMaker. Yeah, those would be kind of my kind of tips. Also, like what I've realized and what I now start looking for is, sure, I want you to be really good at Python and SQL, but if you have some background with PySpark and distributed technologies, I think that does really help you, because if you're so fluent with PySpark that you can experiment in a distributed way, it makes the end-to-end process a lot quicker, because data engineers don't have to kind of redo and like reverse engineer as much as they typically would have.
All right, great. She said that was great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Daniel has a really great question. So mostly I'm wondering how to determine if data science is a field I would enjoy or not. I'm really not enjoying a career as a software engineer, and enjoyment of my work is a main issue I'm worried about. I've done some Coursera type courses online, but they mostly boil down to, here's 6 lines of Python that do a linear regression on 20 data points. And I feel like it's not a good representation of what data science is. How would you recommend I figure out if I would enjoy this field?
Oh man, that's hilarious, because I'm gonna post it soon and I'll definitely keep you and everyone in the loop. But my like criticism for certificates is exactly that, right? Like people do these certificates and they say, oh, I'm an expert, right? Like they like post it on all their LinkedIn, which I mean, it's great that they did it, but they make it seem like that's now the credentials they need for a FANG job, right? Um, like you mentioned, like it's such a curated format that the second you go to a brand new data set, you really probably won't even know where to start, right? So what I always recommend, and Coursera is great because I've had a lot of fun, but what I recommend is take your time. Your goal shouldn't be to just post the certificate. It should be to really get a strong understanding for all that content. So what I do after every section is, okay, maybe one section is on SVM, another section, if you're in the deep learning course, is on CNNs. Take the code or the methodology that they described and literally apply it to any raw data set. When I say raw, like let's take the CNN example. Scrape I was going to say scrape pictures from Google, use that as your training data set, and then build something, right? That is where you like it really soaks in because you kind of done like everything end to end. Because that's the toughest part, right? Like in data science, right? Like the trickiest part is managing the data, right? Understanding the data, cleaning the data, making the data work for you. So replicating that is really useful. That was kind of just touching upon the Coursera, but understanding if you'd enjoy it, the best thing I would do is talk to people. It's tricky right now just because COVID, there's no networking events, like ODSC is not doing anything, but talking to experienced data scientists and just understanding their day to day is really critical. Every position is very different. So Facebook's data science group is very A/B test heavy, very experiment design heavy, right? Like their Python usage is pretty minimal. Apple with their streaming service is really like almost like a data analyst position, but just like a more fast-paced data analyst position. And in some groups, your data scientists are almost like machine learning engineers. It's really important to one, talk to people in various companies so you understand what's a typical job like. Like I said, I wrote an article. You can take a look at that and let me know if that's helpful. But also when you're interviewing, really probe, right? Like you're interviewing them as much as they are interviewing you. So really get to the nitty gritty of what your day-to-day is going to be like. Like understand, are you going to enjoy it? Or are you just going to be stuck in a bunch of meetings and maybe doing this, like writing a SQL query every other week, right? Because that's not really what data scientists sign up for, but that happens time and time again. So those are the couple things I would do, right? Like LinkedIn is a tool, right? And if you could always reach out to me and understand, I could give you advice as well, but there's so many other people out there that I'm sure would be willing to give advice. And then the second you start getting ready to interview, probe, like really probe, because I've had so many colleagues who've been really burned by the expectations not being straight when they got to the position.
Thank you, Hoshisai. Next question is asking, can I get away with just using Python for data visualizations instead of Tableau or Power BI?
Yeah, definitely. I think short answer, yeah, I've rarely used Tableau. Fortunately, in my group, I have a lot of like data analysts. So if I ever need like something visualized that will need to be refreshed regularly, I just send them, say, a query or code that they'll expose in a Tableau dashboard. I can concede I'm not a great visualizer. I am when it comes to presentations, but in terms of building like really sophisticated Tableau dashboards, it's not my skill set.